You've been good with money. Genuinely good. Not perfect, but careful. Intentional. You track things. You think before you spend. You've said no to yourself more times than you can count. And somehow, after all of that, you don't feel free. You feel guilty instead. Guilty when you spend. Guilty when you don't save enough. Guilty when you enjoy something. Guilty when you check your account and the number isn't what you think it should be by now. You did everything right, and the reward is a low-grade, persistent sense that you're still failing. Let's be clear about who this is and isn't about. This isn't about people who avoid their finances entirely, who never open their banking app, who spend without thinking and deal with the consequences later. That's a different pattern entirely, and this isn't for them. This is for the person who pays attention, who has thought seriously about their financial future, who has read enough to know what they should be doing and genuinely tries to do it, who feels the weight of financial decisions in a way that most people around them probably don't. You are not careless. You are not irresponsible. You are not someone who needs to be lectured about the importance of saving. If anything, the problem runs in the opposite direction. You care too deliberately. You've internalized the message that discipline is the answer so completely that you've built your entire financial identity around restraint, around the constant management of your own impulses. And that identity, the disciplined one, the responsible one, the one who has their finances under control, has become something you have to perform every day, without end, without arrival. Because there's no finish line for discipline. There's no moment when you've been responsible enough to stop monitoring yourself. There's no point at which the vigilance gets to relax. So it doesn't, and the guilt stays. Here's the trap. And it's subtle enough that most people never see it. Financial discipline, as most people practice it, is built on a foundation of distrust. Specifically, distrust of yourself. The entire architecture of budgets, spending limits, savings targets, and financial rules exists on the premise that your natural impulses are the enemy, that left to your own devices, without the rules, you would make bad decisions, spend too much, save too little, drift toward comfort and away from responsibility. So you build systems to constrain yourself, rules to override your instincts, structures that keep the dangerous version of you, the undisciplined one, from taking over. And those systems work, sort of. You do save more than you would without them. You do make more intentional decisions. The rules create a shape to your financial life that feels manageable. But here's what the systems also create: a permanent state of self-opposition. Every spending decision becomes a negotiation between two versions of you: the disciplined you, who knows what's right, and the wanting you, who has to be managed, overruled, or denied. And guilt, that specific financial guilt you feel, is the emotional residue of that negotiation. Every time you spend, some part of you is watching, evaluating, deciding whether you were disciplined enough or whether you slipped. Every time you enjoy something, there's a quiet audit happening. Did you earn this? Did you save enough first? Does this fit the rules? Can the responsible version of you justify what the wanting version of you just did? This is the mechanism. Not a budgeting problem, not a willpower problem, a structural problem. You've built a financial life where spending is something you have to defend and restraint is something you have to prove forever. And the guilt isn't a sign that you're failing. It's a sign that the system is working exactly as designed. Because a system built on self-distrust will always produce self-judgment. That's not a bug. It's what the system runs on. The loop goes like this. You set a financial standard for yourself, a savings rate, a spending limit,
a rule about when purchases are acceptable and when they're not. The standard feels right. It feels responsible. It feels like the kind of thing someone who has their life together would do. Then life happens. Not dramatically, just ordinarily. A dinner out that went over budget, a purchase you made because you were tired and it seemed fine in the moment, a month where the savings number was lower than you'd planned. Immediately, the evaluation begins. You measure what happened against the standard, and because the standard was set by the idealized, disciplined version of you, not the tired human version who actually lives your life, you almost always fall short. The shortfall generates guilt. The guilt generates renewed commitment to the standard. The renewed commitment makes the standard feel more important, more defining, more central to your identity. So the next standard you set is slightly stricter, slightly less forgiving, because you've learned, again, that you need the rules to protect you from yourself. And the loop tightens. This is why financial discipline, practiced this way, never produces the freedom it promises, because freedom requires the absence of constant self-monitoring. It requires a baseline level of trust that you'll make reasonable decisions without a rule for every situation. But the discipline system never builds that trust. It replaces trust with rules, and rules require enforcement, and enforcement requires vigilance, and vigilance, sustained indefinitely, feels like anything but free. Here's what this looks like on a Tuesday. You've been disciplined all week, packed lunch 4 days in a row, skipped the coffee shop, said no to a happy hour because the budget was already stretched. You did everything right. On Friday, you spend $60 on dinner with a friend you haven't seen in months. Good food, good conversation. You're present for most of it. But on the drive home, it starts. You spent $60. Was that necessary? Could you have suggested somewhere cheaper? That's coming out of what category exactly? By the time you're home, you're thinking about mental accounting. The dinner wasn't wrong. You know it wasn't wrong. But the guilt is there anyway, doing its quiet audit. The numbers are fine. You're still on track. Logically, nothing bad happened. But the feeling doesn't care about logic. The feeling is responding to the system. And the system says spending requires justification, and you haven't fully justified it yet.
Or maybe it looks like this. You've been saving aggressively for 2 years, making real progress. The number in your account is higher than it's ever been, which should feel good. And for a moment, it does. But then you notice what's missing. The trip you mentioned never got planned. The home repair you keep calling unnecessary is now a real problem. The hobby you used to love has been quietly defunded, not as a decision, but as a drift. Somewhere along the way, spending on yourself started to feel indulgent, like something you have to earn by hitting a number that keeps moving. You have money, but you can't access it emotionally, not without the guilt arriving first. The discipline succeeded, and somehow you feel worse than when you had nothing saved. Or maybe it shows up in a relationship with someone who spends more casually, who doesn't seem to carry the weight of every purchase the way you do. The tension isn't loud, it's a frequency, a slight tightening when something costs more than expected, a quiet withdrawal when plans expand beyond budget. You're always the one holding the line, and increasingly you wonder what holding the line is actually costing you. Not them, you.
Here's where I need you to stop. Not to fix anything, not to recalibrate, just to sit with a question. When was the last time you spent money on something, anything, and felt genuinely, cleanly good about it afterward? Not relief, not justification, not "that was probably fine." Actually good, light,
like the purchase was simply right and didn't require defending. Can you remember? The long-term cost of this pattern isn't financial. Your savings rate is fine. Your retirement projections are probably reasonable. The numbers aren't the problem. The cost is experiential. It's what the discipline takes from your actual life over years. You stop being able to enjoy things you can afford, not because they're too expensive, but because the enjoyment and the guilt arrive together, and the guilt is louder. You start measuring your worth by how little you spend. Discipline becomes the metric. Every month you come in under budget, you feel, briefly, like a good person. Every month you don't, you feel like someone who needs to try harder. Your relationship with money becomes the lens through which you evaluate yourself. And because money is implicated in almost every daily decision, what you eat, where you live, how you socialize, what you wear, how you relax, that lens is never off. You're never just having dinner, you're having dinner and performing a financial evaluation of whether you deserve it. You're never just taking a weekend trip, you're taking a weekend trip and running an internal audit of whether this is responsible given your current savings position. The life you're living gets filtered through the discipline system constantly, and what should be just living starts to feel like a series of financial decisions you're either passing or failing. And the freedom you were promised, the freedom that was supposed to come from getting your finances under control, keeps not arriving. Because freedom isn't a financial state, it's a psychological one. And a system built on self-distrust can't produce it, no matter how long you run the system. So let me ask you a few things, and take them seriously. Do you feel guilty spending money on yourself, even when you have it? Not occasionally, consistently. Do you find yourself calculating the cost of enjoyment in a way that makes the enjoyment feel less worth having? When you hit a savings goal, does the relief last? Or does the next goal appear so quickly that you never actually feel you've arrived anywhere? Have you started to secretly resent the discipline, to feel like it's taken more from you than it's protected? And this one, the hardest one, is the discipline still in service of your life, or has your life quietly become in service of the discipline? Here's what changes when you see this pattern clearly. The guilt isn't evidence of failure, it's evidence of a design problem. You built a system that produces self-judgment as a feature, and it's running exactly as built. Seeing that doesn't mean abandoning financial responsibility. It doesn't mean spending without thought. It means recognizing that a financial system built on the premise that you can't be trusted will never, by design, produce the feeling of being okay. Because a system that requires constant proof of your discipline will always need more proof. The standard will always reset. The guilt will always regenerate. That's what the system does. That's what it's for. And once you see that, once you can name what you're actually running, the guilt starts to look different. Not like a signal that you're failing, like an artifact of a system that was never designed to let you feel free. A system that needed the guilt to keep you compliant. You're not the problem, the architecture is.
There's a version of financial responsibility that doesn't run on self-distrust, that doesn't require you to be your own adversary, that doesn't produce guilt as its primary emotional output. That version is harder to build. It's less legible than a budget. It doesn't have clean metrics. But it's the version where spending on a dinner with a friend doesn't require a defense, where saving is something you do because you trust your future self to deserve it, not because you're afraid of what you'll do without the rules. It doesn't arrive from more discipline. It starts from noticing that the discipline, as practiced, has been extracting a cost you were never told to expect. If this landed somewhere real, leave a comment. Not about what you're going to change, just about whether you recognized the system, whether you felt the guilt that's supposed to mean you're doing well. Sometimes the most important thing is just being able to see what's been running.